a show where I try to educate real stories.
Thank you for watching Truth and Justice with Vivian King. Tonight, I canceled my normal guest, and I wanted to talk about the hot topic in the news, Baltimore. And can Baltimore happen in Houston, Texas? Can an incident like the one that happened to Freddie Gray happen in Houston? I say it can. I say that, similar to what many leaders around town have talked about, Houston, like all major cities with a decent minority population, is a powder keg waiting for a match to explode it. And we'll talk about how the match can explode it as we go further into this conversation tonight. Please join me in this conversation tonight. You know I care about the community, and I know you do too, or you would not be watching. I have two esteemed lawyers in the studio tonight to help me talk about this and to just try to put something on your mind tonight. I have my very good friend, sorority sister, and excellent lawyer extraordinaire, Teana Watson.
Thank you.
Who's a normal co-host, always on here when she has time to come from Fort Bend County and fight that traffic to come down to the studio that's off of Harrisburg. And then I have a great, I used to call him young lawyer, but he's been a lawyer a long time. He's always young to me because I think I was his teacher at Thurgood Marshall School of Law, so he's a baby to me, but he's actually an excellent lawyer, and he's been practicing for what, how long now?
9 years.
9 years. So we have Darrell Jordan. And Darrell Jordan handles a lot of complicated cases, and he is a black man, as you can see, and so he can weigh in, and he's a father and a husband, and he has a son. So he can weigh in, and Teana has 2 sons, and I have 1 daughter. So we can all weigh in as lawyers, and we can weigh in as community activists, as concerned citizens, and as parents. I want to start off with a blog comment that a very good lawyer friend of mine, Rob Fickman, wrote, and I thought it was interesting. Rob Fickman is a very good lawyer, a former president of the Harris County Criminal Lawyers Association. My former coworker, I used to office with him, and he's a white male, and let me just tell you what his perspective is. It's entitled "The Thugs in Blue" by Robert Fickman. Friends, like many of you, I am watching the events that have unfolded in Baltimore and across the country. I heard the commentators on CNN refer to some of the young protesters as thugs. Young people who are protesting the murder of yet another young black man by cops are not thugs. They are Americans exercising their constitutional right to free speech. They are exercising their constitutional right to petition our oft-deaf and useless government for redress of grievances. The protesters are not thugs. That is not to say there are no thugs involved. There are plenty of thugs around. Mainstream media prefers not to properly identify those thugs. Rather than identify the true thugs, Anderson Cooper and others refer to gush at the well-disciplined police response to the protesters. Let's give the cops a big round of applause. I think I'll pass, says Rob Fickman. Why? Because the thugs are the guys in blue who keep killing our fellow unarmed Americans. The thugs are the cops who, under color of law, day after day, across this country, murder and maim our fellow Americans without repercussion. So forgive me for not applauding the cops' well-disciplined response to the citizens' protest of the same cops' murderous conduct. In Baltimore, the thugs are not the protesters. No, in Baltimore, the thugs are the cops who broke a man's spinal cord because he looked at them funny. The thugs are the cops who smashed the same man's voice box. The thugs are the cops who dragged that same man's limp body to a paddy wagon. The thugs are the cops who denied the man medical aid. The thugs are the cops who murdered that man in broad daylight. The thugs are the cops who took a human life because ... Well, because they're thugs. You want to know who the thugs are? Just look for the guys in blue. Among the blue, you will find the thugs. The epidemic of police brutality and the murder of our fellow Americans must stop. We must stop giving these thugs in blue a walk. They need to be prosecuted like any other murderous thugs. And like other murderous thugs, they need to go to prison. Rob Fickman, Houston. Comments welcome. Well, Rob, I do have a comment. Thank you for speaking out and calling these young black men who have been the victim of murder, who have been murdered, your fellow American. Thank you, Rob, for giving them a human presence. Thank you for saying they're Americans and they're your fellow brethren. You did not draw a wedge between young black men and you being a white male with sons who don't have to go through the same thing that our black sons have to go through. Thank you for caring enough to write a blog to get people to talking. Thank you for calling out Anderson Cooper, who called the protesters thugs who were exercising their right to free speech. It's funny. In 1776, when Americans were protesting taxation without representation, and they destroyed their own tea and their own products and threw them in the harbor, nobody called them thugs. You talk about the black young men who are so frustrated in this community that tear up their own communities, where white Americans tore up the harbor with the Boston Tea Party. They were tearing up their own products, their own communities, protesting Great Britain's harsh rule over them, taxing them without representation. Protesting is in the fiber of American being, and my black brethren and white brethren and Hispanic and Asian brethren who decide to exercise their right to free speech and protest are not thugs.
Great.
Thank you. Okay, so that's my soapbox, and I'll now pass it to Teana.
Okay, we're going to start out with the facts of what happened to this young man, Freddie Gray. And as I understand it, this 25-year-old young man was walking in his housing complex where he lived, in his neighborhood, and his eyes met with the police officers. After that, he ran. A chase ensued. Now, what we know about him running was that was an able-bodied young man, if he was running. That's what we know, because our common sense tells us that. Later, after he was taken down, and we know that he was taken down, someone had a cell phone camera, and it's what we see when we look at the video, and that cell phone camera depicts poor Freddie Gray, and he's walking with assistance, somewhat limp, and they're holding him up, and we see as they put him in the back of what I call a paddy wagon. We don't know what happened after that, except for the fact that the police has stipulated he was never placed in a seatbelt. We know from a prisoner that was picked up account that there was some banging around, probably from not being in the seatbelt. We don't know why or what caused the banging around. We know this young man suffered a spinal injury, a severed spine. We know that the state's attorney has looked at the autopsy, which probably explains and defines the cause of that severed spinal injury. And we know that the autopsy has stated that this young man's death is a homicide being someone coming to their death from the result of what another has done. So we have this young man who was killed. We know he was able-bodied before the police handled him, and we know after the police handled him, he ended up dead. Those are our facts.
And those are our facts. Thank you, Ms. Teana, for telling us the facts. Now, Darrell, you saw the video that America saw. What do you think? You see he's not walking on his own. Now, you've seen many a man get arrested, and you don't see the police having to, a man trying to grapple for his footing that cannot, they couldn't put him on his feet. He could not walk.
Yeah, when I was a young boy growing up in Georgia, my mother told me, don't run from the police, because if you do and they catch you, they will beat you. Now, I don't think my mother's ever been to Baltimore. She's been to Texas to visit a few times, but that's an age-old rule. If you run from the police, when they catch you, they will beat you. Even if the cameras are above and helicopters, some of the police chases I've watched, even if the person gets out and lays down, I'm assuming that that's just how they're trained. One comes up, he drops a knee on your back, on the person's back, somebody will secure the neck area, and then at least 2 other officers will struggle with the arms. So normally on these videos that I've seen is 3 to 4 officers subduing someone. And so the only thing I can come up with is when they caught him, he paid a price. He paid the ultimate price with his life. And regardless of the reason that he ran, you know, they're saying that he had a pocket knife, and it's questionable now if the pocket knife was legal or if it was illegal based upon if there was a spring in there to make it a switchblade type spring where you press a button and it pops up. But regardless if he had that knife on him, that wasn't worth his life. And
I must interject here, Darrell. You know that the police officers did not know whether he had a knife in his pocket when they stopped and put their knee in his back and, as by some accounts, bent him like a pretzel. You know that.
And may I say also, the state's attorney who has reviewed the evidence said that it was not an illegal knife.
Right.
It was a pocket knife, is what she said.
Yeah,
he had not committed any crime. And she said that.
Yeah, and so now the defense attorney just today has requested to inspect the knife. And I know as defense attorneys, we like to pull on any little thing we can pull on, but if the knife has 3 springs in it, that still doesn't explain a severed spine.
And if he had an illegal knife, then the police, first of all, have to have probable cause to stop him, and they never reported that they stopped him because they saw a knife. They reported because he looked at them funny.
Right.
And so they had no reason to detain him to see what was in his pocket. If you're riding a bicycle and a knife is showing, it's going to fall out of your pocket. So you can't hold it in your pocket. So we already know that. So we know that something is afoot. But the reason why the black community mistrusts the police are those kind of pranks. Just accept responsibility. A knife has nothing to do with it. The police are not the judge and the jury. Our Constitution was written for police to arrest people and for a judge and for a prosecutor, a judge, and a jury to decide the facts, not a police officer. A police officer doesn't get to brutalize someone. That's cruel and unusual punishment, and I think that's in the Constitution too. So you don't get to brutalize people. You get to arrest them and let them have their day in court.
And part of the difficulty of our system is people naturally trust the police officers. Right. And I remember I had one juvenile who was arrested because he used to hang with Bobby, and Bobby and another guy beat up a kid. So immediately when they reported it back to the school that a young man was beat up by Bobby, they arrested my client because they said, well, you two were always together. And even after it was proven that my client was not with him and the case was dismissed, he was fired from his job as a lifeguard. And I called up to his job. I said, ma'am, they had the wrong person. The case is dismissed. And her response to me was, well, if he wasn't guilty, he wouldn't have been arrested. Wow. And so when people go to court and they have a story to tell, because many people are beaten by the police, many, and it doesn't make the news. But when you come to court and you attempt to tell your story, and it's your word against the officer's word, and you may or may not have a criminal record, you may or may not be the best well-spoken person, or you may not have an education. And so when you're on the stand trying to tell your story, then the cop gets up there with his uniform, 99% of the time, they're going to believe the officer and not believe the client. And so although this is a new phenomenon in the media about these things being reported, they have been happening for decades. I'm sure when you all started practicing, people were getting beat, and me as a lawyer who's been practicing for 9 years, that people have been getting beat the 9 years I've been practicing.
Well, I've always said the most fascinating thing about the Rodney King case was not the fact, unfortunately, that he was beaten, but the fact that a man had his video camera outside of his apartment. He just purchased it, and he was adjusting it on his patio. And he happened to tune in, and he saw something outside, and it looked a little funny, and he focused in on it. And that's how we got the Rodney King video. Yeah. So you're absolutely right. In my practice, I have run across many young black males who have told me that they were beaten and taken down and harmed during an arrest. And the technology was not there. The cameras were not there. The ability to record was not there. But it is now. Yeah,
you know, I would really appreciate it, because I'm in the military. I've been in the military for 14 years, and we'll be out camping in the woods, and we'll get to talking. A lot of police officers in the military as well, and they'll tell me stories of different encounters. You know, one said, well, Darrell, I must have had one of your clients. I pulled him over, he flipped over this card, and he started reading me his rights. He said, Darrell, I gave him every ticket I could think of.
Oh, my God.
You know, and then they'll tell me stories of how they had to rough people up. I wish the police chief would come out and say, look, most likely this is going to happen if you run. And they can explain it. I've said in some of the trials of the violence against police officers that were charged with unofficial oppression, official oppression, and they were testifying and saying, okay, when a person runs from us, that automatically puts us in a different mindset, because the average person won't run. And so they come with more force. They need to explain that to people, because they are beating people who run.
Well, but we do know that there are clients who are mentally impaired, who can just be special and may not understand. It may not react with the same acumen that you have or we have, and the same calmness.
Why don't we stop for just a moment?
And they need to be protected.
Let's take a call. Caller, you've called Truth and Justice with Vivian King. Please give me your comment.
I think the president could do more. He could go the other way on the drug scheduling, make marijuana Schedule 5 as opposed to Schedule 1. Return Vicodin to Schedule 4. End the drug war, and the cops won't be so horny for a bust. They won't be so hyped up. Great show. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. What's interesting about that is I like that comment, horny for a bust. I'm going to have to use that in the future, caller. Thank you for that. I'm going to have to write that down. But let me just say this. The president can say more, but I think he's given speeches every time something has happened to minority people. But let's remember that the president doesn't make the laws. He only can do executive orders. And as we know, the last order he did just for the partial, the DREAM Act for 2 years, his Congress people and senators have sued him. And so it's been stalled. So Congress makes the laws. So Congress is the one that has to end the drug war and change and make drugs legal. It's not the president. You know,
Vivian, but I wish he would go back and take that pen and free some of those people who are doing these ridiculous sentences that they've already admitted. Attorney General Eric Holder, when he was there, he admitted, the president admitted it, and free him.
I think they will.
Can we some of those sentences?
Let me tell you when I think they're going to do it, on his way out.
Last day.
That's when they do it. They do it on their way out, because if they don't, they'll sue him. I mean, they sue the president for everything. I mean, he tried to help emancipate some of the Hispanics that are here, not to say Hispanics, but people who are not in this country legally, because they're from all countries, whose children were born here that are facing deportation. Right. And it was foolproof. You know, they had to have a clean record. They have to have these criteria. And just 2 weeks ago, one of the lawyers I know went to the Fifth Circuit in New Orleans to listen to the arguments, because they filed it here. Either the senators or the congressmen filed it here because they know that the Fifth Circuit is one of the most conservative circuits in the nation, and they're going to go with the Republicans that be, basically. And it was Covina Cloud who went and listened, actually, and she said it was excellent. She said it was excellent, but it'll be a while. And it was on like a speedy docket deal, because the president needs to try to enact some of this before he leaves. So I mean, anything he does, they sue him for it. Right. And so I believe that, just like the caller said, we need to call our Congress people. We have another call. Caller, please state your name and your opinion.
Yes, good evening. Well, I had a observation, and I thought the district attorney or the attorney of the state there in Baltimore, I think she did a good job. But I was wondering why did she was so emphatic on saying that the injuries occurred in the van. It seems to me that he was hurt before he got in the van. So if they can't prove that he got hurt in the van, then that's going to be another loop, escape loop for them to get out of it, because they're going to have to prove that he got injured in the van instead of her saying that the injury occurred in their custody from when they first arrested him. They had him on the ground, and they didn't really show the takedown or anything like that.
I can talk to him about the case.
Yeah, let me tell you this. Let me just make this comment, and then Teana will make a comment after me. Keep this in mind, caller. You didn't see the whole press conference. Remember, the news has news bites. So you don't know all of what she said. And what she says is not evidence. She's just making an announcement to the public because the public, under the free speech, has a right to know what's going on. She is going to keep a lot of those details private. Sure. Because if she puts it public, then the person will be tried in public, and no one will know. And then their lawyers will also already have an answer for those things. So their lawyers are going to get the discovery. I'm sure she's talking about the fatal blow from the autopsy. The fatal blow is not what, I mean, even if his spinal cord was injured out there on the street, that's not what killed him. So remember, they're getting charged with forms of murder. So he died from that windpipe injury, okay, because that's what killed him. I'm just thinking that, okay, because I've done a lot of murder trials. He didn't die from the spinal cord injury. Remember, he just would have not been able to walk, but he would not have died. So remember, they're not being charged for just breaking his back for assault, aggravated assault. They're being charged with murder, forms of murder. So keep that in mind when you're listening to it. And believe me, she has enough evidence for probable cause to believe that those police officers killed him in the back of that van. He was alive when he got in the van, okay?
And the cases, the charges that she brought against him, depraved heart murder, I looked it up in Maryland, what that exactly entails, as well as the involuntary manslaughter. That entails a lot of extreme recklessness on their part. And
let me just stop right now. Teana's going to talk to us more about the specific charges, and we're going to do that when you hang up. So do you have any other comments?
Yes, I do.
Okay, what is that?
Also, I believe that I haven't heard anything to the new, the lady, the sister who took Eric Holder's place.
Loretta Lynch, she's made a comment, and they're already down there investigating. They're doing a dual investigation. Yeah,
but I think that the Department of Justice do have some, I think they should take some of these cases.
Oh, sure.
They can't make the laws. But they should be able to pursue these different departments, police departments around that
the mayor called for
that are bluntly doing these things. And in Baltimore, they got case after case after case. And not only there, even here, it's all over. So they got to come up with something. And she only got like a year and a few months left before she's not
right. But a good investigation takes months, and so to do it right, so that there's no rush to judgment, I would think a good, thorough investigation would take at least 2 months. That's what I would think, because I mean, it all happened in one day, but one afternoon. But I think it'll take a couple of months to actually for everything to be turned over, the complete autopsy report, the complete facts. Put a public service announcement in Baltimore if anybody took videos to turn those in, because there might be businesses that had videos around there. So they got to collect all of this evidence to try to see if there's a civil rights violation in addition to the charges. And that's what the feds can do. The federal jurisdiction is civil rights violation. Some of the legislation we can ask our Congress people to pass is whenever there's police brutality that the feds handle it, period. And it becomes their jurisdictional issue and not the local police. And I think one of the ways we can get fairness is when the local police and the local DA are all the same people and they work together, it's hard to prosecute your own people. So what you can believe is that DA there, that attorney general, that lady prosecutor will probably not have her job if the law enforcement has anything to do with it. And isn't that a sad state of affairs, that law enforcement does not want laws to be fair and equal? Isn't that a sad state of affairs? That bothers me more than anything else, is that the police unions will immediately take a side without doing an investigation when their whole job description and their whole careers has been based on investigation. That bothers me.
Sure.
But I think this is going to change. This right here, I think, is a spark that's going to go across the country, and things are going to change. And in that particular city, it's going to be a big shakeup. Thank you.
Thank you for calling. But remember the educational piece, viewers. We're trying to educate you so that we won't think that it's all on Obama. We got to learn as citizens what our roles are. We need to know what Congress does so you can make a meaningful decision and vote for Congress. You need to know what the senators do. You need to know what the president does. And so let's always keep that in mind. And that's why I'm going to always, because I want this to be an educational show, I'll always tell you, and I'm learning also as we go along, but how laws are structured, and know who the leaders of our laws are. And remember, the president, the Congress can change the law, end the drug war, and then it has to go through the Senate. And if it goes through there, then the president signs law. He can veto it. That's all he can do is sign it after they go through the Congress and Senate, or he can veto it.
And just real quickly, on murder cases, and I haven't had as many as you all probably, I know, not probably.
You haven't.
When I go in on the first setting and I reset, normally they reset for 60 days. Because there's nothing in the file. And so a lot of people were, after 2 weeks, were saying, what's the holdup? What's going on?
It takes a long time to get an autopsy and to put together, it's a lot of police officers that come to a scene of a murder. It's medical records. You don't get toxicology reports right away.
Right.
Now, they gave it an emergency review on autopsies. That means they passed up a whole bunch of dead bodies that were at the morgue that needed to be autopsy, because you can never get them as fast as his was done. But they mixed other people's lives who were, they've had people get killed too that they wanted to know what was wrong. But everything can't jump ahead of the line. And so there's a lot of murders in Baltimore. So it's going to take at least 60 to 90 days. And that's an expedited investigation.
Sure. But that's for the DOJ. I do think the state's attorney had enough evidence in this case to issue the arrest warrants and the charges she did based on probable cause.
We're going to talk about how our clients are treated after Teana goes more into the charges under Baltimore law as she looked it up. And this is a cursory review, but Teana, go over that, and then we'll talk about how our clients are treated in these cases.
Sure. So the state's attorney here again did what most DAs do. She charged the higher offenses that she can charge, and then she also charged the lower offenses as well on these officers. So the highest offense is under Maryland law, second-degree depraved heart murder. And probably the easiest way to explain a depraved heart murder, you were extremely reckless. You were heartless to this person. And as a result of that conduct, that person died, okay? And so you have, it's not intentional, it's not deliberate. Your mental state is your actions were reckless. What is reckless? Reckless is when there is a conscious disregard to assume a risk, or there is a risk, and you knew there was a risk, and you disregarded that risk. So you knew when you put your knee on the back of his neck and you crunched him down, that's a risk that he could be injured. You knew, or killed, when you threw him in the back of the van and you didn't seatbelt him, after putting your knee on him and breaking his back, spinal injury, that he could be killed. You knew after he asked for medical attention on 3 stops, I can't breathe, I need inhaling, I can't breathe, and you denied him medical attention, that was extremely reckless and could have resulted in his death, okay? That's depraved heart murder. And in Maryland, what I've researched is that sentence is 30-year maximum. Maryland laws are much kinder than Texas. Our first degrees are 5 to 99 or life, and second degrees are 2 to 20. So anyway, that's pretty good because ag robberies and so on get 5 to 99 or life in Texas. Involuntary manslaughter. That's the lower charge to the second-degree depraved heart murder. That also has recklessness, extreme reckless conduct of the officers. That has a maximum 10 years. That's pretty nice. Our second degrees, again, at least 20, 2 to 20. Then they charge negligent assault, false imprisonment, misconduct in office. And I would imagine some of those offenses are probably equivalent to misdemeanors. So given that there was no issue of identity who did this, given that there was no issue of toxicology, which normally takes a while in determining cause of death, that's no issue here. The autopsy is what's relevant and so on. And given what we know, now this was an able-bodied person that later ended up destroyed the way he was, I think the state's attorney had enough probable cause to charge these officers.
And remember that probable cause is it more likely than not that it occurred? So is it more likely than not that they deprived him of medical attention when they knew of his injuries? Is it more probable than not that there was some involuntary manslaughter involved if there are video cameras that have been turned in of the way they treated him before they put him on that van? Is it more probable than not? And that just means, yes, it's more, maybe it seems like it did happen. That's all probable cause is. That's not proof beyond a reasonable doubt.
Correct.
That's not a trial. And it's important to know that, because if those same facts would have happened with a normal citizen, with someone else, the same charges would have been filed that night, that same day. Our clients are charged immediately. Many times they don't even know what for or why. So that happens all the time. And let me comment about the 6 people being charged. I found it very interesting that people are alarmed. But I think the majority is alarmed because they're not used to what happens to normal clients. If there is 4 young men, black men in a car right now, and the driver gets stopped for failing to signal his traffic turn, and the officer takes them out of the car and searches them, and they find 1 bag of weed, they're going to charge all 4 boys with that bag of weed. They don't know whose weed it is, and that's probable cause, I believe, from the police. But in trial, they'd have to prove that each one of those young men knowingly and intentionally possessed, had care, custody, and control of that weed, and that would be very difficult to do. But they charge everybody. So that means that all 4 black young men's parents are going to have to post a bond to get them out so they can continue living their life like they lived it before they were arrested, which means go to school, go to work, do errands for the house, whatever they did to live their life. That means that they're going to have to hire lawyers to represent their children to sort through the facts. That happens in Harris County every day. And that's what people are frustrated with, because, and the reason why they want people to end the drug war is because every officer can always say a car smells like marijuana, and that is subjective. You cannot prove that with any independently verifiable evidence. One thing the prosecutors and the law enforcement could do is agree that we will not arrest people and search them unless we see a burning marijuana cigarette. That's what I'm going to be asking for those people who are running for mayor and city council this year. When the next mayor elects or appoints his chief of police, do not get off the street and do not stop doing your job to serve and protect with the smell of marijuana unless you see a burning marijuana cigarette or one in an ashtray that was just put out. That's the only time we should waste our time with that. I'm going to also be asking our next mayor to appoint a police chief that tells the whole public what the chase policy is, arrest chase policy. I am tired of people getting killed by people running from the police when the police just stopped them on a traffic violation. And there's helicopters that are watching where they are going and can watch them all the way to where they stop if they go a normal speed limit so the police can go and arrest them later. The last young man that they killed, the whole time they had the helicopters watch. Now, where was that little boy going to go that the helicopters could have followed him to that destination and radio in for the police, this is where he is, so they can go in an orderly fashion to arrest him if he needed to be arrested. I am ready for I don't want to get killed, I don't want you to get killed, and I don't want any of you to be killed because someone didn't mind the police and stop. So you're gonna let somebody act as stupid as they want to act on the road because they're scared. I have a client that knew that man, and they said that he wasn't reaching for a gun. He had done 15 years on or maybe 20 years on a 25-year sentence as an 18-year-old when they first created state jails and people had to do 90% of their time because they had a lot of space. He vowed never to go back to prison, and he had a blue warrant because his girlfriend had lied and called his parole officers, and he slapped him to send him back to jail because he had 2 girlfriends. That's what I heard. I don't know if that's true, but I had a client the next morning that was in tears because he knew him, and he said that boy vowed never to go. He said that was suicide by cop. He knew they were after him. He knew he had a blue warrant, and he was going to have to be detained until he could have, he had no outstanding charges. He just had a blue warrant from the rest of that 25-year sentence. And he played like he was reaching for something. They said and you never heard the news say that he had a gun in the car, but they said he did not want to go back to jail. And so, really, other people had to be killed, really, for that? I don't care what they've done. I want to use the helicopters like we use them to just go where they are and just go to their house and pick them up. Especially if you know what you're after him for. What would those officers have said they were after him for? And because he ran a stop sign?
Same thing happened at Deerbrook Mall when they were stealing some clothes, and then a high-speed chase ensued, and 2 or 3 people got killed. Is it worth it?
What I want our law enforcement community to do is say we're going to be more mature than the 18, 19, and 20-year-old of the young people who make stupid decisions and run for police officers. We are not going to aid and abet them in making stupid decisions which might end up killing somebody. Why are we doing that? And all we do as a society is tell the police, okay, you're right for what you do. Now, if I whoop my daughter's butt for running from the police, you'd arrest me for injury to a child. But if somebody runs from the police for a stop sign, you're gonna just wrap your arms around them and tell them they do no wrong. That's why we have no accountability now. I'm asking for accountability and transparency in policy. And we need a police chase, and I'm asking you to ask every city council person and everybody that's asking you for your vote this November to say, what is your police chase policy going to be? Can we use the helicopters that we pay for as taxpayers to follow them home so that you'll know where to go pick them up, where that car landed, instead of endangering our lives? Because we know when murderers are picked up, or murder suspects, they just go willingly. I get so tired before all these videos came up, my Anglo brethren said, always believe in what the police said. In the Michael Brown case, they believed that he reached in for the cop who shot him. And I had to tell him, we don't believe that, because just like Darrell Jordan said tonight, all of us are taught not to run from the police. Sure. And that's why when murder suspects, sexual assault suspects, when you come after them, they usually surrender. Sure. If there's an arrest warrant, they acquiesce. Their parents turn them in. Let me tell y'all that, viewers, if you don't know that. They turn them in. So there's no problems. A lot of times this is immature officers with their egos, and they endanger people's lives. We need to make sure that they understand that your job is hard. We understand that, and we support you with that hard job. But don't let your egos endanger other people's lives. We got to insist upon that.
Well, I think it's also true, something we brought up before on your show, and that is that our civil rights are not really defined anymore.
Right.
Freddie Gray's case is an excellent example. Mm-hmm. Why can't you run from the police? It's not in the penal code that it's a crime. No, it's not good judgment. But if you had not committed a crime, if there's no reasonable suspicion or probable cause, why can't you turn around and say, I don't want to encounter with you. My encounters with you in the past have not been good, and I just don't feel like it today. Yeah. And it's not clear that you can do that.
And let me comment on that, Teana. The NAACP had a press conference last week, and the president, James Douglas, spoke, Bishop James Dixon spoke, Reverend Nash spoke, the Urban League representative, Justin Robinson Jr. spoke. I was able to speak, and Derek Muhammad. And I was told by a lot of our brethren in the courthouse that they heard it on NPR radio, my comment on NPR. Of course, I wasn't on the local news, but the men were on the local news. But I was like the female representative. And so some judges and some other Anglo judges and white and lawyers told me that they heard it was nice comments. Because what I said was, let us speak for the little man. And let us speak for the little man to know, what are our civil rights? Sure. Do we have any? I had a person from one of the Hispanic stations who was at the press conference, a reporter, say, but Ms. King, if you're one of my reporters, they had emailed her what the law was, because I guess she had texted them what I said, that what are our civil rights? We have a right to run from the police. We have a right to run, period. I mean, because you're running on MLK Boulevard and not on Memorial Drive or Washington, you still have the same civil rights, or do we not? Did black people lose their civil rights because we live in black neighborhoods? Or I haven't seen that in the Constitution. I haven't seen that amendment. I haven't seen that change. And so she came and told me, she said, talk to me about this. They said that in a high crime neighborhood, you don't have a right to run. Somebody from their legal staff told them that. I said they have taken an excerpt from a case out of context.
Sure.
Because that's not it. They had to already have probable cause to stop them, and they ran. Okay, that means the officers could articulate what crime they suspected was afoot to be stopped. But just to generally look at the cops, you can do like this to the police if you want to and turn around.
Give them the finger.
You can give them the finger. I mean, it's in the I mean, it's already United States Supreme Court's cases that say that you can use your free speech however you want to. This is free speech. It's free speech. Okay, but you cannot incite a riot with free speech. So you can't say, "Come on, everybody, let's kill the cops," and everybody has guns and they start killing the cops. Isn't it going to be interesting that our legislature right now has already said you can carry a concealed weapon in your car without a license, and now they want you to just be able to do it all the time. Is that going to be true for Black America? In the black side of town, are the people that Anderson Cooper is calling thugs in Houston, are they going to be able to carry their guns on their backs like that? Well, I wonder.
And let me say that not only did that person who heard the press conference use high crime area as a means to excuse behavior, police officers use that as well. But what's sad about that was Freddie Gray was at his home.
Right.
And so if you have the unfortunate, very, very unfortunate plight in life of living in an area that is probably impoverished and probably riddled with crime, then what choice do you have? It's a sad, sad statement. What can you do? He was at his home.
I agree. And let me take another call, please. Caller, thank you for calling Truth and Justice with Vivian King.
After a few days, they released the autopsy report and said Mr. Gray had a bit of marijuana, a bit of heroin in him, but they haven't released the tox screens for the officers. And do you think we'll ever hear those?
I don't think they took tox on the officers, but sometimes you'd want them to do that because you don't know what officers are doing. I've known as a former prosecutor and lawyer of officers who did narcotics being on cocaine, officers, but you'll never hear of them being checked for drugs. So I doubt if they did that, because remember, without the videos, there probably would have been the normal cover-up. They would have made the same report. Guess what that is, caller? I was in fear of my life.
Yeah.
Oh, sure.
And what happens is, even in the military, and it transfers over to the police force, you go through all this training on how to take people down. You're lifting weights all the time, may or may not be on steroids, and then you have a chance to chase somebody down and use some of the training that right. When special forces units go and they have to sit and wait in war zones, that kills them. They want to be a part of the action. And unfortunately, I think that attitude transfers over to our local police forces. They want to use what they've been practicing on and working on, and sometimes we're the test dummies.
That's true. It looks like we have another call. Caller, thank you for calling Truth and Justice.
Hi, how are you?
Fine, how are you?
I'm great. My question is, what is the law on mental health? A person with dual diagnosis, one maybe addiction, but has an extensive history of mental health, and you went as far as putting it on his identification card with Texas Department of Public Safety.
Thank you for calling in, but that's a conversation for a different day. Today, we want you to comment on the Freddie Gray case and what's going on in the criminal justice system as it relates to police brutality. We deal with criminal law issues, and that's not a criminal issue. That's a mental health issue. Was this person charged with a crime?
Yes, but this was a couple of years ago. But I can't comment on the Freddie Gray. And what I want to say, the comment you made about the helicopters, I agree totally with that. That is so true, that they can follow them with the helicopters and track where they have been located.
And will you do this for me? Will you, if you go to any political rallies or fundraisers for politicians, will you bring that up? Because that's where it's important with your local government. And this year is the year for our local government elections. This is when we vote for mayor. This is where we vote for city council people. Will you bring that up? Because they are the people who are supposed to control that.
I will do that, and thank you so much for this informative station. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
If I can comment a little bit on, I think, addressing her question on what are the laws protecting the mentally ill people. She has something on a family member that describes him as mentally ill. Is there something that protects him? I don't know of any, ma'am. I do represent mentally impaired persons. We have special courts now, and we have special procedures. But let me tell you, in the Harris County Jail, the highest mental health authority, most populated mental health authority in Harris County is the county jail. Mentally ill people are not only getting arrested, they're staying there, they're incarcerated, and they're imprisoned. So I don't know of any special protection they get. Obviously, it's up to the attorney to try to show some mitigating evidence, and it's up to the attorney to try to bring out whether that person intentionally did something, if they had the competency to do it. But other than that, a special law protecting them?
No.
No, ma'am.
And, because like Teana said, our jail facilities are the biggest mental health facilities in the country and in the state. They are treated. I mean, they're in Harris County Jail awaiting court. They're receiving their medication. There are doctors there, nurses. The people in Harris County Jail are at 1200 Baker Street, because that's the jail that has the hospital and medical facilities. In our jails and our prisons, they are treated. Unfortunately, one of my big, I'm pretty radical, so one of my approaches is I believe that we have too many prisons, and some of our prisons can be mental health facilities.
Sure.
And I think that when people leave out of TDC or anywhere, if they're committed, we can use those same staff people to be trained. We can use the same people, because sometimes on this show people will say, well, if we close up all the prisons, and where are those people going to work? Because so many cities, that's the main income, is that prison there. Well, why couldn't that be a medical facility? Why can't that be a factory for us to make something? It's our tax dollars, so we can use those big old buildings for whatever we want to use those big old buildings for, and we can have the people that are working as guards be the people who are working there. So, I mean, understand that we, the people, run our government. Our government doesn't run us. And that's what we have all lost sight of, especially the minority community. We have lost sight of that. I'm getting a note that there are 10 minutes. Let me just say this before I turn this around to Teana and back to Darrell. I love the men in blue. I have a lot of friends that are men in blue, but some of them are thugs, as Robert Figman said. I love my white brethren, my Hispanic brethren, and my black young brethren. And some of them are thugs, and they should be called out. What I'm tired of is for white men like Anderson Cooper, who've lived a beautiful life with a mother like Gloria Vanderbilt and lived a rich life, and know he has so much influence over all of America of all colors, to immediately call black kids thugs. I was told that they called the people that were protesting in blue and white thugs. White people said that. Guess who they were? They were college-educated Sigmas, Zetas, Zeta Sigma. They were graduated from college, and the word grad chapter of a fraternity. But white America called them thugs, called them a gang. Oh, whoa. Teana and I are members of Delta Sigma Theta. If you saw them in red at Loretta Lynch's confirmation, they weren't a gang.
Even the head police officer in St. Louis, who was a Kappa, he would take pictures with people and he would do the sign.
That's a Kappa sign. So that's where white America doesn't know us. So we're offended if we're always called thugs, and we're the most educated in the group, and we're being called thugs because we're wearing an organization's colors from our college days. We're all college educated. So understand that our paranoia and our anger runs deep. Those who are educated try to deal with it in a different way. I want to be a voice for the voiceless. I want accountability on our police department. I want police unions who try to weed out the bad police officers and support and keep the good officers. So as a community, we can support the good officers also. But we want the same civil rights as everyone else. I also had a LULAC member say at the last press conference, Vivian, what are our rules of engagement? What are they? I was calling it civil rights, but he just wants to know it so he can tell his Hispanic brethren, what are the rules of engagement with a police officer? Isn't it strange that we're Americans and we don't know? I mean, we know we have to tell our black children, and we have to keep in mind as black people that we got to mind the police whether they're right or wrong. We understand that we can't do like our white friends who might be in the car with us, but we have got to remind people of our civil rights. We have a right to walk away from the police officer unless he can articulate why he believes I'm committing a crime. I mean, that's the law. It has not changed.
Correct.
That's my comment. And we are not thugs, and our kids are not thugs.
Well, I want to say some other things in defense of the state's attorney. Charging all 6. Just as Vivian stated in her hypothetical about the 4 young men all being charged with the marijuana, 1 bag in the car, this state's attorney had the statements of the police officers in her custody that she reviewed as evidence. We have not seen those statements. What's interesting is probably no one admitted to any misconduct in those statements. I think that's highly probable.
And they probably lied in their statements, different from what you saw on those videos that she had.
One of the reasons officers will say they charged all 4 is because no one owned up to it. And if somebody owned up to it, then I would have charged just that 1. Well, many times what happens is after you do that, somebody probably will and somebody probably won't. But it's a way to get them to do it. So understand they were all involved. We don't know the culpability. That's why she charged the way she did. But that is something that law enforcement does every day to each of our clients all the time. It's appropriate, and you do it when you really don't know. The other information I want to share with you is we understand that police officers are trained in tactics and they want to use them. The issues with these cases, what makes them so insulting and so offensive, is these people had not committed any crimes, had not done anything to deserve the tactics that they used. Even the case in Charleston in South Carolina, that gentleman had a broken tail light, He was the one that was running and was shot in the back 8 times. Later on, we know in his mind, I think he had some child support issues. But really, we're a country that go from a broken taillight to shooting someone in the back? Or is it because that someone was black and a male? Does it change? Does the formula change when the person is different? When he looks different? When he has a different complexion? When he is of a different makeup? What's so sad about what's going on is there's no correlation with the amount of violence and what the person actually did. And that's what makes that so sad.
Yeah, and I know there may be somebody watching who's saying, well, if they just hadn't done anything wrong, they would be okay. And I could possibly understand that. This weekend I had Army duty. I had to be in Austin at 5 o'clock in the morning. I went to rent a car at Hertz, and it was cheaper for me to rent it on Friday morning, because I left on Friday, as opposed to Thursday. Well, they stay open till 1 o'clock in the morning. This is the airport location. So I set my reservation for 12:30. I'm dressed in jeans and a t-shirt. I walk on the property, and immediately I was approached by security, and not, hey, how are you doing? What are you doing here? And immediately began interrogating me. And I'm a lawyer. I have a secret security clearance. I'm an Army officer. All these things are going through my mind, but then I had to just relax and explain why I was on the property, why they're open, wow, to do business with them. You know, and I come every month. I rent a car every month to drive. And, you know, I immediately was put in the position that many of my clients have been in. And say I had been 21 years old, not a lawyer, not all these other things, and I let the security guard have it. Possibly I could have gone to jail when I was a business invitee, already paid with my American Express card, you know. And so even though I had done everything wrong, not even that night, but in life, when I showed up at that property at 12 o'clock, 12:30 that night, I was a criminal. I was a thug. That is what they saw. And so it's not always about if you're doing something wrong. Sometimes you can be doing everything right, sure, and people will put you in a position where if you don't humble yourself and go above what you should have to, I could have been arrested, because they could have told any story to the police and they would have believed them when they arrived that day.
And because you're a black man that has a great record, what they would have said is the thing that you can't fight is you were resisting arrest.
Absolutely.
Because that's always the one that you can do, because they're not going to be able to put drugs on him after they search him. They're not going to say he smells like marijuana, because he could have us all go down to Austin and testify he's never smelled like marijuana. That's his habit. We see him every day. So, I mean, they had, and his wife. And so the only thing they could do was do something subjective like he resisted arrest. But no one, even if the media got it, would say, well, what was he being arrested for? Because to resist arrest, there has to be a reason and probable cause to arrest you. But nobody asked that question. And that's why we do this show, is because we want to ask the questions that the media, all the news channels are going to say the same thing. They're going to all say the same thing. They're going to try to call us thugs where they can, so that everybody is still comfortable in their seat, so that white America is still comfortable with the last bastion of slavery, which is the criminal justice system. But I'm going to tell you, 56-year-olds like me will take it and speak for the little people. But these kids are a powder keg waiting to explode, because guess what? They're tired of the police lying on them. They're tired of going to jail for nothing. So every now and then they will be too aggressive with the police back, because they're tired of it. They're going to go to jail anyway. So some kids don't mind going to jail for something. Let's not let us erupt like that. Let's take control of our community and demand accountability from our mayor to get a proper police chief that'll do the right thing by these kids. Let's demand that of the district attorney's office. Let's demand that of these police unions. And let's demand this of our police.
Yeah, you know, if you recall when the young man was shot at Lone Star College, and then they turned out they arrested the wrong person. They arrested the guy who was actually shot in the behind. The sheriff came out and said, well, his arrest helped lead to the arrest of the right person.
And do you know that civil rights people like Reverend Nash, Ministers Against Crime, begged Adrian Garcia to apologize? But I believe Adrian Garcia is a good man. I support him. I love him personally. But I believe that he could not apologize, because he knows that white America, who he wants to vote for him, will, in that slavery, last bastion of slavery mentality, you cannot apologize for arresting a black man. If it was a white man, first of all, a white man wouldn't have been arrested wrong. But if he had, it would have been big time apologies. We're tired of it. Our kids matter too. Black lives matter too. We're not discounting white lives. We know your lives matter. Hispanic lives matter. We're going to treat you just like we want to be treated. But we're asking you to treat us like you want to be treated. And I'm getting the key to wrap up. So I guess I have to have the last word on this tonight. Thank you for watching this heated debate and conversation and letting us vent about what happened in Baltimore. Baltimore, they're thugs in blue, or were they the thugs in black? Good night. Thank you for tuning in again. Tonight we have something really good, a hot topic in the news this week. He's been charged with crime. This is a show where I try to educate real stories. This week, been charged with crime. This is a show where I